It was one of those evenings where the ordinary felt especially suffocating. My best friend, Megan, and I were at another unremarkable birthday party. One of those gatherings where everyone's pretending they're thrilled to be there while secretly checking their phones under the table. Couples swapped parenting tips, singles shared exaggerated dating horror stories, and someone's uncle cornered me to discuss retirement plans. Thrilling, right? I was halfway through my second glass of wine when Megan leaned in with her trademark mischievous smile. "I've got something way more fun planned for next weekend," she whispered, her tone conspiratorial. "Oh yeah," I replied, more curious than I cared to admit. "What's the occasion?" He grinned. "Not the kind of thing I can explain in one sentence. But trust me, it's worth it. Just say you'll come." The way she said it, so casually yet deliberately, sparked something in me. Megan wasn't one for subtlety. She was being vague. It was because she wanted me intrigued. And, of course, it worked. I pressed her for details, but she just shook her head, her laugh light and teasing. "Just keep an open mind. No expectations." That was Megan for you. Mysterious to a fault. The kind of person who could convince you to dive headfirst into something completely out of character. All because she had this way of making it seem like an adventure you couldn't afford to miss. By the time I got home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about her invite. I tried to dismiss it, but curiosity clung to me. Megan had a knack for throwing me out of my comfort zone, and honestly my life needed it. I've been feeling stuck, work, home, repeat. The promise of something unexpected felt like a lifeline. I texted her the next day. "Fine, I'm in. But this better not be like that salsa class where you ditched me after 10 minutes. Her reply came almost immediately. "Trust me. This is next level fun. You won't regret it." The week crawled by as I wrestled with equal parts anticipation and apprehension. Megan sent me the details a few days later. A cryptic message with an address and time. No other clues. I was tempted to back out, but the thought of spending another weekend scrolling through Netflix made the decision for me. When Saturday arrived, I stood in front of my closet, staring at rows of clothes that all suddenly felt wrong. Was this a cocktail dress kind of night? Jeans and a cute top? Had no idea. In the end, I settled on a sleek black dress that struck a balance between confident and understated. Megan picked me up, her excitement infectious. "You're going to love this," she said, her eyes sparkling. "Am I, though?" I teased, trying to mask my nervous energy. She just laughed and cranked up the music as we drove through the quiet streets. The address led us to a house tucked into a neighborhood I didn't even know existed. Large, elegant, and glowing with soft light. It wasn't what I expected, but I couldn't pin down what I had expected in the first place. "Relax," Megan said as we walked up to the door. "This is supposed to be fun." The door opened to reveal a man with an easy smile, who greeted us warmly and motioned us inside. The air was warm, scented with something rich and inviting. People milled about, chatting and laughing, their movements fluid and comfortable. A soft hum of music played in the background, just loud enough to create atmosphere without intruding. I followed Megan's lead, clutching the glass of wine she handed me. The energy in the room was palpable, something I couldn't quite put into words. It wasn't like a regular party. People seemed more connected, as though there was an unspoken understanding that everyone was here for the same reason, whatever that reason might be. As we wandered through the rooms, I caught snippets of conversations, glimpses of interactions that hinted at something beneath the surface. It wasn't overt, but there was a charge in the air, an undercurrent that made me hyper-aware of every movement, every glance. At one point, Megan leaned in and whispered, "What do you think so far?" "It's interesting," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Definitely not what I expected." She grinned, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Just wait. The night's only getting started." The evening stretched out like a slow, intoxicating melody. The house was alive, each room a small universe of its own. Some spaces hummed with quiet conversation, others buzzed with laughter and the clink of glasses. Everywhere there was this feeling, an unspoken invitation to let go of everything holding you back. I stayed close to Megan at first, letting her guide me through the crowd. She was in her element, greeting people with warm smiles and casual touches, her laughter light and unguarded. I envied how effortlessly she seemed to navigate the room, like she belonged there. Meanwhile, I clutched my drink like a lifeline, my heart fluttering every time someone caught my gaze. It was in the living room, near a wide leather couch, that things started to shift. A man approached us, his smile easy but deliberate. He was tall, with dark hair that fell just so and a quiet confidence that made it impossible to look away. "Megan," he greeted her, his voice low and warm. Then his eyes turned to me. "And you must be her friend." "Ella," I said, my voice catching slightly. His attention was like a spotlight, and I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. "Ella," he repeated, his lips curving into a small smile. "Beautiful name." Megan excused herself with a knowing glance, leaving me alone with him. For a moment we just stood there, the hum of the room fading as the space between us seemed to shrink. "First time here?" he asked, his voice rich and steady. "Is it that obvious?" I replied, trying to match his calm. "A little," he admitted, his smile widening. "But you're doing fine." We talked about nothing and everything. His name was Nathan, and there was something about him that made me forget my nervousness. He was magnetic, his words weaving a spell that made the rest of the room fade away. At one point he reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. The touch was fleeting, almost innocent, but it sent a ripple of warmth through me. The next hour was a blur of subtle shifts and unspoken promises. The atmosphere of the house seemed to change, becoming heavier, more charged. Couples drifted closer together, their laughter quieter, their touches lingering. The music softened, its rhythm slower, more deliberate. Nathan led me to a smaller room off the main hall, where the lighting was dim, and the furniture was lush and inviting. A low conversation buzzed around us, but my attention was locked on him. "Are you comfortable?" he asked, his tone gentle but laced with something deeper. I nodded, unable to find the words. My heart was racing, my skin tingling with anticipation. He reached for my hand, his fingers warm and steady as he led me to a couch. We sat close, his knee brushing mine. It was such a small touch, but it felt electric. His voice dropped lower as he leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. "You're allowed to just feel," he murmured. "No expectations." I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in. There was no rush, no pressure, just this strange, beautiful connection that made the air between us feel alive. The night unfolded like a dream. Every glance, every whispered word, every careful touch felt deliberate, intimate. At one point, I felt his hand graze my arm, the warmth of his palm lingering as he let his fingers trail down. The sensation was overwhelming, a delicate mix of excitement and vulnerability. My breath hitched, and he smiled, his eyes never leaving mine. When our lips finally met, it was soft at first, a gentle exploration. His hand cupped my face, his thumb brushing against my cheek as he deepened the kiss. It wasn't hurried. It was a slow, deliberate dance, each movement measured and meaningful. My pulse quickened, my body responding instinctively to the rhythm of the moment. The rest of the world disappeared. I was lost in the sensations, the warmth of his touch, the weight of his presence, the way his voice sounded when he whispered my name. Every moment felt heightened, every sensation sharper, more vivid. The quiet hum of the room wrapped around me like a warm cocoon. I was lying on one of the softest couches I'd ever felt, the faint scent of vanilla lingering in the air. My eyes were closed, my mind floating somewhere between reality and the haze of the evening. Everything felt distant, almost dreamlike, a symphony of whispered voices and the occasional clink of glasses. I must have drifted off for a few moments, letting the comfort of the moment take over. When I opened my eyes, a strange sensation broke through the fog light. Warm water ran down my cheek. It startled me at first, the feeling unfamiliar and surprising, like being woken by a splash of water during a deep sleep. I wiped my face instinctively, my mind catching up slowly, and realized I needed to step away and regroup. I rose from the couch, suddenly hyper-aware of my surroundings. The air felt heavier and my skin tingled, a slight warmth lingering on my face. It was a curious feeling, almost like the aftermath of a sun-kissed day. Shaking off the sensation, I decided to take a moment for myself. The hallway leading to the bathroom was dimly lit, the quiet hum of music growing softer as I walked. By the time I reached the shower, the warmth on my face had shifted to a gentle heat that seemed to radiate across my skin. It wasn't unpleasant, just unexpected. Turning the water on, I let it cascade over me, the cool stream offering a much-needed reset. As I washed, I noticed the heat had traveled lower, settling into my pelvis with a strange intensity. It was sharp at first, a prickling sensation that made my breath catch, but as I let the water work its magic, it began to fade. The coolness soothed me, the burning easing into nothingness. Standing there, I let the water run over me, grounding myself in the rhythm of its flow. The house and its many mysteries felt far away in that moment. I needed this, a space to breathe, to process, to let the evening's complexities roll off me like the droplets pooling at my feet. By the time I stepped out, I felt calmer, my body refreshed and my mind clearer. Wrapping a towel around myself, I looked into the mirror and saw someone I didn't quite recognize. My cheeks were flushed, my hair damp and tousled, my eyes glinting with something I couldn't name. It wasn't regret or unease. If anything, it was curiosity. The ride home from the party was a blur. Megan had stayed behind, wrapped up in the energy of the night, so I called for a car. As the city lights flashed by, I leaned my head against the window, my thoughts tangled and restless. The night had been unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Intense, overwhelming, and strangely liberating. By the time I stepped into my apartment, the stillness felt almost foreign. The echo of the party still hummed faintly in my ears. Kicking off my heels, I padded into the bathroom, splashed cool water on my face, and tried to settle the unease that lingered just beneath my skin. I told myself it was just exhaustion. The next few days passed quietly, though I couldn't shake the sensation that something was off. At first, I chalked it up to overthinking. The party had been a whirlwind, after all. But by the third morning, the discomfort in my lower abdomen had turned into a steady, nagging burn that refused to fade. I tried to ignore it, hoping it would pass, but the irritation only grew. Drinking water helped for a while, but soon even that wasn't enough. Simple things like sitting at my desk or walking felt different, like my body was trying to tell me something. By the end of the week, I couldn't deny it any longer. Something was wrong. The doctor's office was bright and sterile, the faint hum of machines filling the silence as I waited in the small examination room. I felt ridiculous for being nervous. Plenty of people dealt with these things, right? But as I sat there, fiddling with the edge of my sweater, a flicker of shame crept in. Maybe I had been too careless, too caught up in the excitement of something new. The doctor entered with a kind smile, her presence calm and reassuring. After a short conversation and a few routine checks, she gave me the answer I'd been dreading: a urinary tract infection. "It's common," she said, her voice gentle but matter-of-fact. "A combination of factors can lead to it, especially after certain lifestyle changes or events. Nothing to be embarrassed about. I'll prescribe something to clear it up quickly." I nodded, grateful for her understanding but still reeling. On the one hand, it was a relief to have an explanation. On the other, I couldn't help but feel like I'd let my curiosity get the better of me. That evening, as I sat on the edge of my bed, the prescription bottle sitting on my nightstand, I let myself reflect. The party had been thrilling, a step outside my carefully crafted world. But now, in the quiet of my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd rushed headlong into something I wasn't fully prepared for. As I sipped a glass of water, I told myself I'd take this as a lesson, not as a reason to retreat into my shell, but as a reminder to approach life's adventures with a little more caution. For now, all I could do was rest, recover, and take care of myself. The days that followed were quieter than I'd expected. The medication started working quickly, easing the discomfort and giving me time to think. In those moments of stillness, I found myself replaying the events of that night, not with regret, but with a sense of curiosity about what it all meant for me. I realized I had stepped into something far outside my comfort zone, not just the party but the emotions and sensations that came with it. It wasn't just about the people I'd met or the experiences I'd had. It was about discovering a part of myself I hadn't known existed. But there were lessons, too. A reminder that excitement and caution could coexist, that diving into the unknown didn't mean abandoning self-awareness. By the end of the week, Megan showed up at my door, her grin as wide as ever. "So," she said, flopping onto my couch uninvited. "How's my favorite adventurer? Survived your first foray into the wild?" I laughed, shaking my head at her dramatics. "Barely. Yes." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "You were the talk of the night, you know. Nathan couldn't stop asking about you after you left." Hearing his name made my chest tighten, not with regret, but with a pang of something deeper. "I'm sure he's moved on by now," I said, keeping my tone light. Megan shrugged. "Maybe. But you haven't, have you?" I opened my mouth to protest but stopped. She wasn't entirely wrong. Nathan had left an impression, one I wasn't sure how to unpack yet. That night, as I curled up with a book and a cup of tea, I thought about what Megan had said. The party had been more than just a new experience. It was a turning point, a moment where I'd stepped out of the life I thought I was meant to lead and into one that felt more uncertain, but also more alive. I didn't know if I'd ever see Nathan again or if I'd return to another party like that. But for the first time in a long time I felt like I had choices. The reflection in my living room mirror caught my eye as I stood to head to bed. I looked different. Not drastically but enough to notice. There was a spark there, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. The girl who walked into that party had been cautious, unsure, a little afraid. The woman who left was still figuring things out but wasn't afraid to keep trying. I smiled at my reflection and turned out the light. Tomorrow was a new day, and for the first time in a long time I was ready for it. It's been 15 days since that night, and I've had a lot of time to think about everything that happened. Looking back, it's strange how something can feel so surreal in the moment, yet so vivid in memory. The party, the people, the choices I made. It all felt like stepping into an entirely different world. But now, with some distance, I see things a bit more clearly. That experience taught me more about myself than I expected, and I feel like I owe it to anyone curious about taking a similar leap to share what I've learned. First, know your limits and trust your instincts. It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of trying something new, but you should always listen to that inner voice. If something feels off, take a moment to step back. The night is never worth ignoring your boundaries. Second, take care of yourself before, during, and after. That night, I learned the hard way how important it is to stay hydrated and practice self-care. Your health, both physical and emotional, should always come first. Third, don't be afraid to try new things, but go in with your eyes open. Experiences like this can be empowering and exciting, but they can also challenge your comfort zone in unexpected ways. It's okay to feel nervous, to pause and evaluate what's happening. Finally, be prepared to reflect. Sometimes, stepping out of your routine teaches you things you didn't know about yourself. For me, the biggest revelation was how much I'd been holding myself back, not just from adventures, but from living fully and authentically. I'm not here to tell anyone what to do or how to live their life. But if you're ever presented with an opportunity that both excites and terrifies you, remember that it's okay to say yes, as long as you stay true to yourself. For now, I'm still processing everything, but I don't regret stepping into that world. It reminded me that life isn't just about staying safe. It's about finding a balance between caution and courage, between routine and adventure. If you've ever found yourself wondering about taking that leap, my advice is simple. Be curious, but be careful. Life's too short to ignore opportunities, but it's also too precious to throw away on carelessness. And who knows? Maybe one day, you'll look back on a moment like that and realize it wasn't just a story. It was a turning point.